What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And, of course, if you're watching on our growing YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, THI publisher Andrew Jones. And, Andrew, we're here for a little bit of a different podcast. I think this is a fun one, as I like to call it, because of what we're going to be talking about in this one.
The other ones aren't fun?
No, I mean, they're all fun, of course. Anytime I get to talk to you, AJ, it's fantastic. Highlight of my day, you know what I mean? But, I think this one's this one's a little bit of a different twist than what we usually do from talking about Carolina position groups and previewing games and all that kind of stuff. And from you guys that have clicked on this video, obviously you know what we're talking about in this one. There's been, Carolina's stated mission is to compete on a national level, getting that CFP playoff. There's a lot of expectations for this program to potentially do that, looking at the number 9 and number 10 preseason rankings in most of the preseason polls, and Coastal Division champions, and a team that's expected and whose stated mission is to get to that ACC championship game and win the Coastal Division. Expectations are high for this program, and really it's only been less than 3 years since Mac Brown's come in. So pretty awesome turnaround for this program, what they've been able to do in such a short space of time, not only on the field, but on the recruiting trail as well. But AJ, let's talk about Carolina's college football playoff chances. Obviously, you put out a couple articles saying, 5 reasons Carolina can do it, 5 reasons Carolina won't do it. If you haven't seen those, go check us out on our website, TarHeelIllustrated.com. Real quick plug, you can get a 60-day free trial over there as well, as long as you sign up before Friday. 60-day free trial that takes you through most of the football season, no strings attached, and a little bit through preseason basketball and whatnot as well. So if you want to check that out, link in the description below, TarHeelIllustrated.com. Go sign up before Friday evening. You've obviously written those articles. We've talked about it a little bit on some of the podcasts we've done, not a ton. Well, obviously will be the main gist of this one, but looking at Carolina's schedule, looking at some of the opponents they have to play, looking at, the fact that they're probably going to more than likely have to go through Clemson, the ACC title game, if things work out how they've worked out for the last, 5-10 years in particular. What do you think Carolina has a legitimate chance at it being a college football playoff contender? Maybe not getting to it, but being a legitimate contender for that spot?
I think that they can, when they go to South Bend, and that's going to be the barometer. When they go to South Bend October 30th, I think they could be 7-0. If they are 7-0, then they are a legitimate contender for the CFP, because if they win in South Bend, prime time on NBC, you got 2 things at play there. You've got the program trying to ascend and be a CFP contender, and you've got Sam pushing for the Heisman. I think the schedule is laid out nicely for both things to happen, provided that the Tar Heels and Sam take care of business. So first 6 games of the season, they should win each of those games. I think at Virginia Tech's going to be tough. Mm-hmm. I think at Georgia Tech in the Mercedes-Benz Dome Stadium, it's a dome. If it's half empty, I think that could be a challenge. If it's half empty and like a noon kick, Carolina's going to have to generate its own energy. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the FSU game last year. Definitely. And then they're going to be at home for a while. They got Virginia at home in September, Georgia State, then Virginia. They go to Georgia Tech. Then they got Duke at home, FSU at home, Miami at home, open date, go to South Bend. Miami's going to be a big deal. Like they could be top 10 or near the top 10, and really depends on how they recover from the opener against Alabama, how much damage that long-term damage that does to the Hurricanes. And it could, who knows? Yeah. That'll still be a very tough game. That'll be a big stage. And hopefully the Hurricanes have a really good year, because I want to see, look, I cover North Carolina. A lot of times I have seasons where I don't cover many important games. So this year we have a chance to cover a really interesting, meaningful season, right? So everybody they play, if you're a Carolina fan, you should want those teams to be as good as they possibly can be, because each time Carolina beats them, if they do, it's better for Carolina. So you go to game number 7 with Miami. If they're 7-0, they win that. They got that locked in. But their final 5 games, Jacob, at Notre Dame, at Pitt, and at NC State are included in there. And I think all 3 are going to be ranked. I think Pitt's good. I think people that are just kind of overlooking Pitt right now, I think that's a mistake. They're well coached, they're physical, and they got an NFL quarterback. And I think NC State could be really good. I love the parts NC State has. Dave Doran's a good coach. I know Carolina fans like to make fun of him about being dull, Dave, and I know media jokes. Well, he doesn't put out depth charts. He doesn't give much access. He's one of those coaches that's always planning the D-Day invasion, right? But doesn't matter. He could coach. The man could flat out coach. NC State is consistently annoying to a lot of other teams in the ACC because they're always capable of beating you. They may throw one clunker in a year, but that doesn't mean don't judge them by that, because Wolfpack will learn and get better. So by the time Carolina rolls in there the day after Thanksgiving, that could be a ranked team. So the schedule sets up, if Carolina takes care of business, they'll accumulate a lot of really solid wins. And for Sam, it sets up, he'll be on some really big stages late in the season to prove himself as a worthy candidate for the Heisman. And I do think in a way they're going to go hand in hand. If this club's 9-3, Sam has no chance to win the Heisman. He won't even be in New York. If this club goes 11-1, Sam has a chance to win the Heisman, and he'll be in New York. So they kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
Definitely. You know, I think the biggest thing for this team and this program is getting past what they struggled with last year. When you look at the Florida State game, when you look at some of their other losses,
Virginia
as well. You're looking at it. You're looking at games where Carolina just, you know, last year in particular, just lost games they really shouldn't have. You know what I mean? And games that on paper, maybe that Carolina was ranked higher than they were at that spot, but games that this team just didn't show up at. Florida State's the one that really stands out from last season, where, you know, Carolina just didn't really show up and played a little bit better late, but it was too late at that point. They've got to get past that point. They've got to get past that hump. I think they've learned from those experiences. I think they got better towards the end of the season as well. Big wins over Miami. I thought, you know, even with the team they had to roll out in the Orange Bowl, competed really well. And, you know, I think there's a little bit more depth on that team. And if Carolina didn't lose the guys that they lost in Surratt and De'Ambra Brown and Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, could have been a whole different experience and a whole different game. But I think that experience alone for the younger guys will help propel this program forward this year and give them and I think, you know, in a lot of ways could have been a blessing disguised for this year's team. So I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking for is, can they get past those games and can they win the games they're supposed to? And I'm going to run through, I know you mentioned the first half of the schedule.
Let me comment very quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We talked about this last year, and I think those are games they should have lost. Mm-hmm. They lost them because they were supposed to lose them because they weren't ready yet.
Yeah, they weren't ready yet.
Look, we use the word process a lot, and some people get annoyed by it, but they have to understand this isn't a snap your, as much as it appears like a snap your finger situation, because Mac has elevated the program in literally every part of the program. Every box has been checked, and they're all ascending in this direction, right? But it's still not a snap your finger overnight situation. So you have to go through phases and stages and processes in order to get to be where the program's ultimately going to be. Because this is not about this whole building and this whole development, everything Mac's done hasn't been about the 2021 season. It's been about the North Carolina football program. So the North Carolina football program last year was not the number 5 team in the country when they went to Tallahassee, and they proved it that night. And that was part of their process, was go. And then a couple weeks later, they go to Charlottesville, and the defense gets shredded. And they didn't handle some late situations well. Certainly, you know, the 4th and 1 fake punt, they weren't prepared for it and all that kind of stuff. So everybody was learning as they went through that process. A&M was A&M. I think that worked out fine for Carolina because the guys that got the experience that night, the program, the staff knows that Josh Downs is a player. They know Asante is a player. They learned they had to go out and get another running back because they needed somebody that could handle a load, and they went out and got Ty Chandler because they didn't have anybody that night. So they learned a lot from that game. I still think there are processes. I'm not so sure that 12-0 is a given. Yes, they could win all 12 games individually, but their process in becoming whatever Mac ultimately has this program at might include some bumps this year. They very well could lose in Atlanta. They very well go to South Bend and get blown out, or they could lose to NC State, or they could get stunned at home by Duke or something. Well, no, not Duke. Duke's gonna be pretty bad this year, but Virginia could come in September and beat them. Virginia's a very well coached team. They're a physical team, and they could cause issues for the Tar Heels. So, yeah, I think that those games were games they were supposed to lose because that's part of their process. I'm not going to say that they have to lose this year as part of their process, but we don't really know exactly where they are in the process. That's what's so great about Friday night in Blacksburg. We'll find out a lot about that. And I think that the coaches are looking at that too. Mac kind of said Monday, yeah, we know some stuff, but we don't know everything. We're going to find out what we're all about. He said, he told his team, look, you guys went from number 5 to number 25 last year in Tallahassee in 3 hours and 15 minutes because you weren't number 5. We're going to find out if you're number 10. If you're not, you're going to drop to 25 in 3.5 hours again. So we'll see where they are in that part of the process. But you have to understand that to build up to where they want this program to be, they have to take a step on every step of the ladder. And sometimes those are when you're going up a ladder, you slip a little bit and you got to catch yourself.
Yeah.
That's part of climbing a ladder. That's part of climbing a mountain. And I still think there's some of that in front of them. They may have those nights, and because they have some supreme talent, they may overcome it. But it'll be interesting to see where those moments are.
Definitely. We already ran through the first half of the schedule. I'm going to run through the first half, and then I'm going to run through the second half just so people know exactly what it looks like. I know a lot of Carolina fans already know, but just so you can hear it in your ears. At Virginia Tech, season opener, obviously tough game. Then that goes without saying. Georgia State at home the following weekend. Then you got Virginia at home, a game in which you've mentioned. Next three at Georgia Tech. Then you got Duke at home and Florida State at home. Now I look at that part of the schedule. And then we'll move on to the second half. What two games stand out? Is it that at Virginia Tech, at Georgia Tech, if you had to pick two that you're kind of looking for, these could be a little bit tougher than people are maybe thinking?
Yeah, and I just think Virginia at home. I think there's a danger when a club is being anointed as something that it has not yet achieved in the field.
Yeah.
You kind of look, it's easier for those kids to kind of step back and say, boy, Miami, it's the seventh game. That's a long way away. You just kind of jump over that other stuff. Well, those other guys are pretty good too, for the most part. They have players. Carolina's not that far removed from losing 3 in a row to Duke. Okay. And getting shredded by Daniel Evans running up and down the field like he was Michael Carter. Okay. So the program's not that far from being that. I know they've made tremendous strides, but the point is, they aren't yet at a point where they can just look at a game and check it off and say it's a W. No. Wofford will be a W, no doubt about it. Georgia State should be, but Georgia State is picked as a contender in the Sun Belt. Mm-hmm. And the Sun Belt had a pretty good year last year. Ask Iowa State what it's like playing a Sun Belt team at home last year. And Iowa State, they were one of the darlings of the national media last year and are right now. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was Louisiana went in there and beat them a year ago. Mm-hmm. So that's not. They should win that game. It's not a complete and total game. You don't want to overlook it. Mac will want to test his team's focus going into a week like that, because if you're ready to go and you're fully dialed in for Georgia State, then it's going to be then he'll know that there's a better chance that they'll have the right mindset 2 weeks later when they go to Atlanta and play Georgia Tech. So they don't have those stumbles. That's how you gauge, okay, what did we learn from Florida State last year? What did we learn from going up to Charlottesville last year? So that's all part of the process. It's not just, hey, this guy can throw well, this guy can run well. Look at all those dudes and depth they have on defense. There's a lot of psychology that goes into football as well. And I think that's part of the test that this team's going to battle the first 6 weeks of the season when they really get into the back half of the schedule, which is what's going to determine ultimately how we'll remember this club.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good segue to the second half. I'm going to list that out real quick. You got Miami in Chapel Hill. Then you go to Notre Dame as a bye week in between that. At Notre Dame. You got Wake Forest at home the following weekend, followed by Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh, but that's a Thursday night game. Wofford at home, and then at NC State, Friday night game. Friday afternoon or evening game. It's either going to be 3:30 or 7 p.m. Obviously going to be a nationally televised game as well, one would expect. So, looking at the first half versus the second half, I think it kind of goes without saying that on paper at least, the second half of the schedule is a little bit tougher, because when I look at it, I look at 4 games in particular that Carolina could, in my opinion, lose and slip up in. Miami at home, a lot of revenge on Miami's mind from what happened last year. Obviously, we don't know the kind of club that they're going to be, but they're going to want to right the wrongs from the embarrassment they had down in Miami. At Notre Dame, tough game, hardest game of the year. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that, on paper at least. At Pittsburgh on Thursday night is another game that really stands out to me of, okay, Kenny Pickett's Pittsburgh's a good team. Kenny Pickett's a good quarterback. Thursday night game. You don't know why Carolina loves playing Pittsburgh on Thursday night, but they do. That's going to be
not their choice. For some reason, ESPN and the league are trying to create a tradition out of something that doesn't need to be tradition.
Yeah, I don't get that one, but they love putting them on a Thursday night.
That's because they like me standing outside of Heinz Field at 2:30 in the morning in 19-degree temperatures, waiting for an Uber driver that tells me you're not at the pickup point.
Well, I'm sure we'll be having a similar story this year as well, but we'll hope not. And then at NC State,
I hate that.
Oh, I would hate it too. And at NC State to end the year. So, that second half of the schedule for me is where we really see, okay, what's this Carolina team made of? And I think that the fact that it is the second half of the year, where Carolina on paper has a little bit tougher games, should work out in Carolina's favor, because you would expect this team 6 games in, second half of the schedule, to kind of know who they are, have established some kind of identity as a team, than if you just have to go play 4 really tough games in the first 6 games. So I think that does shape up well for the Tar Heels on paper, but looking at those, there's 4 games in particular on that side of the schedule that really stand out to me of legitimate games that I think Carolina could not really even necessarily slip up in, but just lose because of the opponents and where they're playing them and when they're playing them and how the games could go. So yeah, second half of the schedule for me shapes up to be a little bit tougher than the first.
Well, it gives time for all those young dudes on defense to kind of come to. If we go back and look at the Wake Forest game, by the way, you didn't mention Wake Forest. That's a
Tough
tricky
game too, yeah.
It's, by the way, it's a non-conference game. A lot of people are picking Carolina to go 8-1 or 9-0 in league play. That's actually a non-conference game because they don't play each other very often. The school's scheduled a home and home non-conference series. When Carolina went to Wake a couple years ago, that was a non-conference game. Last year's game was a league game because they redid the schedule for COVID. Mm-hmm. So this is the non-conference game that the two are playing in the home and home agreement. That's actually a dangerous game. Wake was routing Carolina for a while last year, and then they went to the youth movement on defense, put in the true freshmen, Murphy, Grimes, Conley. And think about where that game was in the season. That's at about where the second half picks up this year. So Silver and Ritzy and Dilworth and all those guys are going to get a lot of opportunities to play and figure out who they are. Whatever Des Evans still has to work through, he will have worked through at that point. They'll know who they are at receiver, could be getting Bo Corrales or have him back already by then, and they'll know what they're all about in the running game as well. So I agree with you. I think that the way it lays out, it's very favorable to them because they could work out some stuff and be raring to go by the second half of that schedule. Mm-hmm. There are two things that should be of concern for Carolina fans about the way the schedule is laid out. After Miami, they get 2 weeks for Notre Dame. If they're 7-0, a lot of coaches will tell you they would just rather stay in routine, get right back. Just don't break from routine at all and just get and play that game. Do you really need 2 weeks to prepare for an opponent? Preparation is at such a high level now that the way these guys handle film and the way coaches scout opponents, that they don't really need 2 weeks to get ready for anybody. If you're going to have an open date at some point, maybe you want it a week before you have a club that you can overlook. So you kind of get ready to play them, right? Mm-hmm. I think they would rather just go right into this game and play it. So 2 weeks in between, if they're 7-0 and they're number 4 in the country and all the talk is about Sam could win or lose the Heisman in South Bend, how do they deal with that? That's just a lot for the coaches to kind of figure out a way to keep their mind off of that for so long. Coaches will tell you don't want to play the game on Tuesday or Wednesday. You want to play it on Saturday, but you don't want to play that game 10 days before it even starts. Yeah. So that'll be a challenge there. The other thing is once you get there, they go 2 weeks without playing, but then once they get to Notre Dame, they play 3 times in 12 days because they're at Notre Dame. The following Saturday, they're at home against Wake, and then they go to Pitt on a Thursday night. That Wake game is a danger game. Dave Clawson's an excellent coach. Wake crosses its T's and dots its I's. Sam Hartman's back. They got dudes that can go get it. So that's a danger game. So you got to go to Dame, host dangerous Wake, and go to Pitt in a 12-day span. I think that defines the season.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think that's really the hinge point of the season where things can really be shaken out now. Because I think that's it, it's just a tough stretch, and I didn't even realize it was in a 12-day span. Now that I look at the schedule in front of me and look at the dates, you're absolutely right. That's tough, and that's really going to be where we determine what this team is if they can really meet those expectations of contending for the college football playoff or not. And like I said, there's tough games, before that even. Like we've talked about, Miami at Georgia Tech, at Virginia Tech to start the season, Virginia at home. I mean, there's tough games that Carolina's going to have to win and pass. They're going to have to pass some tests before that. But I think if they can get to that point undefeated, which I think is possible, and there is a lot of, I think that's a realistic expectation for this team. That's where we're going to really know if this team's a legitimate contender for the CFB playoff. So I'll end it by asking you this, AJ. I personally think Carolina is a legitimate contender for the playoff. However, I don't think they will get to the playoff this year. I'm willing to say that and put it out there. We obviously do our staff picks before the season as well. I think I picked Carolina losing 2 regular season games and then losing in the ACC championship game to Clemson. So I think I finished 11-3 is what I picked them to finish. So I think they have a good year. I think they have a really, a positive year for this program and one they can be very, very proud of. But for me personally, I don't think they get to the college football playoff this year. What is your bold prediction for the season?
I agree with you. I don't know if that's bold or not, but it's certainly not what Carolina fans want to hear. But let's remember, They're only a couple years removed from winning 5 games in 2 years. They went 6-27 versus FBS teams in that one stretch there. So, or overall, at the end of the Larry Fedora era, they completely collapsed.
That was bad.
And Mac and his staff have done an amazing job rebuilding everything. But they've kind of reached a point where, yeah, on paper, if you look at each game as 12 individual slices, they can handle each slice, right? I could see them winning in Notre Dame. I could see them winning in Raleigh and all that kind of stuff. But when you string them all together, and this is a program that hasn't proven it can do this before, it's very difficult for me to project them doing something that they haven't proven they can do before. Especially, they as good a season as last year was, they still lost 4 times.
Exactly.
They lost late, and they played really well late. They were in position to have a play here or there where they could beat Notre Dame. They were tied with Texas A&M. With 5 minutes left in the game, and had the ball like at the Texas A&M 35. They were in position in that game as well, but they didn't have that extra layer of dude. They didn't have that extra layer of freshness. They weren't ready to win those games just yet. Are they more ready to win those games now? I think they are, but that doesn't mean that they win each one of them. They still may lose one of those games, then they win one of them. So I think for North Carolina to get the CFP, they're probably either going to have to be 12-0 when they go to the ACC title game and lose a competitive game to Clemson, or 11-1 and beat Clemson in the ACC title game. I think this is a really good team. I think this is a top 10 team at the end of the season, but I'm not sure this is a CFP team. Mac finally said something that Dean and I have been saying for a while, and you know this, Jacob. I think the program gets better. I think 22 is a better team than 21, even with Sam going. The people who have made the mistake by saying, oh, this is just Sam Howell, what are they going to be after he leaves? They're going to be better, because they're going to be really good on defense in 22. And they have a lot of parts, and they're building depth in areas where when if they lose 3 or 4 offensive linemen this year, they're going to be able to replace those guys pretty well. They actually are getting to that point. So I think 21 is part of the process to get to 22, which might be part of the process to get to 23. So when it's either Criswell or May, and I think it'll ultimately be May, when he's a junior in 23, I think North Carolina could break through to the CFP. They could do it this year, but I don't expect it. I think they'll knock on the door. I think they'll be into the conversation when they go to South Bend. And that's pretty good, because it hadn't happened very often before. So, again, it's all part of the process, man. Get in the conversation now, get more in the conversation next year, and complete the deal in a couple of years. I think that's probably the trajectory that this thing is headed.
Exactly. And like you said, I'm glad you said it. When you look at how far this program's come in less than 3 years, the fact that we're even the fact that we're even doing this podcast right now, I think is a testament to the direction of this program and what the staff and the new players have been able to do. So yeah, I don't think they'll reach it this year, but I do expect them over the next few seasons to get there. I do think under Mac Brown this time around, they find a way.
I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. I'm the host here for a minute. Would you be surprised or shocked if they made it this year?
Yes, I'll be surprised. I don't know if shock's a little bit more than surprised, at least in my head, if that makes sense to anybody.
No, it does. It makes total sense. That's why I threw both in there.
I would be surprised. Yes, I would be surprised if they get there. I think that would be, for me and the expectations that I have, and I do have high expectations for this team, that would be getting over even more than what I already expect. Because for me, the step from being a good program to being a great program, which I think Carolina has done. I think they're getting close to that great program is there. But from being a great program to being a CFB team, I think is even almost a bigger jump in some ways.
It is. You're right.
I mean, and that's why you see, basically every year the same 4, 5, 6 teams, because it's hard to get to that point. And for Carolina to do it, you
see the occasional interloper, and look what happens when LSU does it, and then the next year they completely fall off the map.
Exactly.
And that's LSU. So I agree. I mean, look at how Auburn's flared up. Auburn won a title, played for a title. They flare up and then drop off. It's so hard to get there, and it's so hard to stay there. And North Carolina's never done it in its past. It was been ranked number 1 in the AP poll 1 week in its history, and that was 1948.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. So, they've gotten close. Mac had them real close in 97, and they just didn't have the dudes. Florida State was really, really good. They lost Judgment Day 20-3, and they weren't ready. I think that the program is more quickly heading in the right direction than that one did. And I actually think they have a chance to be better than they were even then. But I'm not sure the 21 version will be that, but they'll be close. Yeah, I think we'll be offensively. I still got questions about the defense.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's
So yeah, I don't expect it, but
Mhm.
yeah, I'd be surprised if they got in there. But I think they'll be in the conversation. And in the end, when it's in late January, Carolina fans, I think will look back and say, okay, we took another step forward this year, big step.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a positive.
100%. 100%. AJ. Yeah, I think we'd both be surprised. I think a lot of Carolina fans, whether they're willing to admit it or not, if you actually sit down and kind of break it down and be as realistic as possible with it, I think a lot of Carolina fans will be a little bit surprised if Carolina got there this year. Now down the line, 2-3 years, would I be surprised if things keep going like this? Absolutely not.
Let me leave you with this. I'm related to one,
Mhm.
okay, who's really passionate. And he
I think I know who
he
you're talking
told me
about.
the other day that, man, all this top 10 hype is scaring me to death. Why would he say that? Because we ain't never done it before.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't say ain't, but
yeah,
I threw that in there for dramatic
yeah,
effect.
yeah, for the people, right?
Well, I'm just afraid every time that we're supposed to be good, something always happens. Well, that's because you're not Oklahoma or Alabama.
Exactly.
Okay, but if you want to be there, you just got to break through. Look at Oregon. Oregon did it. And people say, oh, they got all that Nike money. Well, Carolina's got Jordan Brand. And Carolina's got a hell of a lot more to offer than Oregon.
Yeah.
All right. So it can happen. It can absolutely happen in football at North Carolina. Bobby Bowden used to call Carolina the sleeping giant for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And, you got to do it with the right coach. If you saw the Mac Brown column I wrote last week, look at Texas before him and look at Texas after him. It's got to be the right coach. You could do it a lot of places. Iowa State's in the top 10, for goodness sakes. Anybody knows anything about Iowa State football, if it wasn't for Vandy, they've been maybe the worst power conference program in a long time. I mean, It would have been Duke until about 10 years ago with Cutcliffe, and it would have been Wake until about 20 years ago with Grove. Mm-hmm. But Iowa State's been terrible, but look what we're there. If you get the right coach, you get the right culture, you bring in some dudes, you coach them up, you can win. Carolina's got all that right now. So I do think it'll eventually happen, but probably not this year, but they'll make it fun. It's going to be a fun time covering this team. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, who knows? We might look. People might watch this podcast in 3 months, 4 months, and we might look dumb. You know what I mean?
That's idiots. Watch that Jacob and AJ.
So I mean, but that's the price you pay. I don't think it's a too bold prediction to say that Carolina's not quite there yet. But
one of the great things about doing this for a living, and when you do, I've been doing prediction capsules since my early days at Star News more than 20 years ago. And people say, well, aren't you worried about being wrong? Because I know people on our staff don't want to do picks sometimes because they don't want to be wrong. They think that people will think bad of them if they're wrong. I think the great thing about it is when you're wrong, it means the element of surprise.
Exactly.
In a game with a team. And I love the element of surprise. I have no problem with being wrong. Nobody's right all the time. And the element of surprise is what makes sports great. Mm-hmm. And so if this club goes 8-4 this year, I know our subscribers will hate it. They won't like us for being wrong, but hey, it's the element of surprise, right?
Exactly, man. You can't always be right. I'm not, we're wrong a lot of the times, you know what I mean? So, I mean, we make predictions. That's the price you pay. You got to be willing to put yourself out there.
My wife just tucked her head and opened the door to my office for a second. I looked over there and I said, she'll tell you how often I'm wrong. There's a high percentage of miss when it comes to AJ and with her. So
exactly, man. Exactly. But it's fun. I love doing predictions. I love talking about it. I love putting my neck on the line, put it out there a little bit, see what happens. I don't mind being looking stupid here in a few months. And you best believe I don't mind looking right in the next few months as well. So
when we post it, we're going to post this podcast on our site and we're going to put it on the board. The only place we're going to put it on the board is on the premium threads, I guess, because we don't usually post stuff on the free threads. So go ahead and sign up. It's 60 days. There's no strings attached. You get to check out everything we do. We know what you guys think. Are we dead wrong? Or are the Tar Heels headed the CFP? Are they not? What's their record going to be? I want to know what you guys think. Come hang out. You can read what everybody else thinks because we're going to demand that our subscribers make their picks too. That way they can stick their necks out on the line as well.
I love it. We can all be wrong or we can all be right together, right? I love it. So yeah, absolutely. Guys, sign up.
Tar Heel Nation 11, Tillador, all you guys.
They're coming for you, man. We need those predictions. So like AJ said, sign up for free, 60-day free trial. You can comment what you think Carolina's going to do in our premium message boards as well. And let's do this on the YouTube side for those who maybe aren't subscribed. You should because it's a free trial. But if you're not going to, if you think Carolina's a legitimate CFP playoff contender, if you think they'll reach it this year, go ahead and give us a thumbs up on the video below so we can do a little poll over here as well. But yeah, good place to wrap this one up, AJ. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. You guys know what to do. As always, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, so you know every single time we upload. And we do upload a lot. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.